Hey everyone, this is Kenny from Broadstreet. I'm just going to do a quick sound check. David or Tiffany or somebody in the audience, if you just let me know if you can hear me all right. And also if you can see my screen, that'd be helpful too. All right, cool. Thank you, Katie and David and Tiffany. We're just going to give it a few minutes. Normally, a fair number of people roll in after the hour mark. So we'll get started just a couple minutes, probably 102, 103, somewhere around there. All right, why don't we go ahead and get it started? Thank you everyone for joining us for our session, Ramp Up Digital Revenue Fast. It became clear as we had done some webinars over the last couple of weeks, especially in amidst current events, coronavirus, that a number of our publishers, both Broadstreet customers, Web Publisher Pro customers, and also customers that were not ours, were looking to make that pivot, or at least focus on the digital end of their business. And what we want to do is create a very condensed crash course to get everyone up to speed on digital. So today, this is Kenny from Broadstreet, currently speaking. We also have David Walsh from Web Publisher Pro. So we're each going to go ahead and provide our best practices, best advice for our respective areas. As we're moving through this content, there's going to be a lot of content in a short period of time. Again, it is a crash course. If you have any questions, use the Zoom chat feature. You might find it under Zoom toolbar somewhere, but if you take a look at that Zoom chat feature, questions always pop up throughout the webinar. If it makes sense, we'll stop and address those questions along the way. The core webinar content will probably last about 45 to 50 minutes. Ideally, sometimes it can run a little beyond that, but we'll always have a Q&A session at the end. That's where some of the best conversation pops up. And if it does have to run over an hour, we'll go ahead and do that. But we'll make sure that the core content gets into that hour. We are recording this session. And so far, the Zoom recording, despite obviously more people using Zoom around the country and around the world. That recording has worked out pretty well. So we've been able to get some very high quality recordings. We'll make those available to everyone afterward by email. We'll also post them on our sites, but we'll hop right in. Again, any questions, pop them into the webinar chat and we'll address them along the way. So there are three primary sources of digital revenue. So for most of Broadstreet's customers, Web Publisher Pro customers, for the ones who are kind of digital first, their revenue comes from three areas. And these aren't the only areas, but there are three big areas where the revenue will come from. One is advertising in its many forms. It could be display, it could be newsletter, programmatic, contest, various outlets there, but advertising is a big part of what our publishers do. Sponsored content or native content, another form of advertising, but kind of in its own category. And reader revenue. So reader revenue is something that's really just come around in the last couple of years. Well, it's always been around to some degree, but getting digital readers to pay $5 a month, or maybe $60 to $100 for a year, getting them to pay for your content is something that we've really only seen become viable in the last couple of years. And there are more membership models and more publishers making that model work, especially given current events. A number of them have run some very successful membership campaigns so far. But these are the three big areas where they're making money. So what we want to do is go ahead and outline an action plan for you today. I'll talk about that in a second. But for our digital first publishers, they kind of have a few different characteristics or traits. One is that they typically run very low head operations. So as we're thinking about, okay, we really have to focus on digital, we're always searching for strategic benefit and ROI in practically everything we do. And that includes our choice of tools and vendors. And we're really looking for lowest effort, highest impact approach to everything. So our digital first customers have made it work in digital, but it's a slightly different model than the print days. So wanted to outline that first, but here's that action plan. And we think it's something that could generally be achieved in 2 to 4 weeks. You sit down and you really focus on getting these things done. These are the items that you'll definitely want to knock off while you really do make that pivot to digital. So it's 2 weeks ideally, could probably take up to 4 weeks. But if you were starting from almost nothing digitally, we'll walk you through these different steps, try and clear any fog there might be in terms of like tools and vendors. We will probably be a little opinionated in the different tools you should be using, because we want, we don't want to be frozen by indecision. We want you to be able to get up and running very quickly. So this is the action plan we're going to be walking through. A little bit about Broadstreet, and I'll pass it over to David to speak about Web Publisher Pro afterward. But Broadstreet is an ad manager focused on direct digital sales. Founded in 2012, we have a commitment to our customers' prosperity. So we think about what it is that our customers go through on a day-to-day basis, how they make money, how they can impress their customers. So we really think about their model. And we want them to be successful, not just in ordinary time, but at times like this, when there's might be a little crunch on advertising, when there might be more opportunity for membership, we want them to be successful. Our vision is to be the best platform for direct digital sales, especially for local news and niche publishers. I think we're doing a pretty good job moving in that direction. Broadstreet has won some awards, and we're the #1 rated ad manager on G2, which is like Yelp or Google reviews. 75 or about 70% of our publishers are digital first / online only. We do have a number of publishers who have print publications as well, and might actually have most of their business on the print side, but 70% are generally online only or have most of their presence in digital. But we work with hundreds of successful news publishers, and we kind of have a really good view of them. They're scattered all throughout the country, primarily the US, but we do have many in Canada and the UK as well. But we see their different models, how they work, what works here, what doesn't seem to work so well, and what works in general. So at this point, I'll hand it over to David at Web Publisher Pro. Describe a little bit about what he does.
Hey everyone, it's David Walsh. I'm the founder of Web Publisher Pro. We specialize in web design, development, management for digital publishers. We have similar breakdown to Broadstreet. About 70% of our clients are digital only, and the remainder have a print product as well. Our managed websites serve approximately 100 million readers per month. So we're in the weeds. We're doing this. We're helping our publishers drive performance, drive revenue from their websites. Our clients include hyperlocals, city and regional magazines, B2B, and niche publications. And we work currently with more than 100 top content producers or 100 publishers in these verticals to drive more traffic and performance from their websites.
Perfect. All right. And if you haven't read it, we mention this in practically every webinar, but as long as you're going to really be thinking about pivoting your business or putting that focus on digital, it's so important to think about your advantages as an independent or niche publisher. You do have real innate advantages, especially since we're not working with many, news conglomerates. Most of our publishers are small to medium sized, and they have the ability to, or they have some abilities that their larger competitors don't have. So if you're interested in, I'd say a very in-depth thought piece, 10 Advantages is a great place to start to think about where you really differentiate yourself and your business from Google, Facebook, all of your bigger competitors. So 10 Advantages, something you'll definitely want to take a look at. And I always click on that accidentally. All right, let's go through our action plan. All right, so we have a kind of a 9-step action plan that we want to walk through today. And the first piece is assessing your competition. So if you've been on some Broadstreet webinars, you'll recognize some of this content. The first thing that we want to do before we really think about like our website and our reader revenue and our advertising is really think about what is everyone else offering? Who's competing for the same money? So Google, Facebook, and local competitors, we will use them as an example. So if we're going to start in digital, we obviously have a number of competitors that we're probably going to be dealing with. Some of the biggest are going to be Google, Facebook, and our local competitors. So what we want to do before we really think about all that other stuff, all the ways we're going to make money, is look at everyone else that's making money and list them all out and understand what they're doing. What are they selling in terms of advertising, in terms of their membership? What are their membership models? What are the different items that they're doing for their end clients? And what is their pricing? What are their offerings? What we want to do is get everything out there and get it into one big list, right? Because we want to understand what we can do, not to necessarily copy them, but we want to do, we want to see what they're doing, what we can do, and also what we can do better. Ultimately, we take a look at our competition and we want to understand how we can appeal to a segment of a particular market in terms of pricing, value, positioning. What are we going to do that's really going to set us apart? And if you take a look at Broadstreet, as a company, there are other companies that do what we do, but we make sure that there are certain things that we do better than anyone else for a certain segment of our customer base. And if we look even deeper into Facebook and Google, and 10 Advantages really gets into that, Facebook and Google on the advertising side, they have enormous scale. For example, most of our niche publishers don't necessarily have this scale. They have hyper precise targeting, right? So Facebook knows almost exactly what somebody likes on Facebook, because when we use that like button, they're collecting that data. Google knows our intent, right? So if we're Googling washers and dryers, they can probably make a pretty good assumption that we're interested or we're in the washer and dryer market. So they're also typically less expensive. So Facebook and Google have massive scale, incredible targeting. They know what people either like or what they're interested in. It might seem like they're unstoppable, but it's actually not the case. They have some sincere weaknesses. One is that there's no real human interaction. It's kind of self-serve. You have to go to Facebook and Google and kind of walk yourself through running a successful campaign. That's a problem because that's a major point of friction. And a lot of small businesses don't do that, for example. They need someone to walk them through a successful campaign. They're not sure what they need to market, or, really, they don't have a lot of time to go to Facebook and Google and allocate any kind of budget, or they're not even sure what a reasonable budget is. So they have some sincere weaknesses in terms of that human interaction. There's no guidance toward the results that they want to get. What is it that you want to achieve with your campaign? If they do run a campaign, there's not a lot of transparency, not a lot of you did this well and you could improve this. Unable to differentiate products, what you buy in Google and Facebook, it's pretty much the same thing. As an advertiser, you can't really stand out above everyone else. You're kind of just running your campaign alongside everyone else. And there's no clear premium buy for certain types of advertisers. There's certain advertisers who like to go for make a big splash branding campaign, and you can't demonstrate clear value. This is an example of just kind of taking a look at a big competitor and analyzing what they do, and understanding what their weaknesses are. Because ultimately, whatever their weaknesses are, we're going to try and hit with our strengths. So once we have this kind of competitor analysis down, then we want to start moving into the digital side. So for most digital first publishers, your website forms the foundation of your digital business. So I'm going to pass it over to David at this point.
Hey everyone. So we put together a list of basic requirements as we see them for the best choices for publishers. We believe that these provide for easy adaptability, pivoting. One of the large, we had a lot of support requests that came in with everything that happened with coronavirus, and the publishers looking to adapt in order to serve increased traffic, launch special sections. Maybe they had to pause print, so they were doing digital editions. They wanted to launch membership programs. Publishers that had a very basic tech stack of these items that I'm outlining here, they were able to get these up and running very quickly, as opposed to being on some closed system or some system where you're relying on a developer who's not able to keep up with the demand or the pivot that was needed. So we promote WordPress. It's very flexible, very easy to adapt. If you're on some closed system, I won't name them, but you'll be subject to what they offer, and they're likely not rolling out new features in the matter of 1 to 2 days in order to adapt to a new demand that your readers have. Google Analytics, majority of sites are using this, but you're able to set up event tracking, see what users are actually reading. With recent circumstances and like events traffic or contest traffic dropping, you're able to track in Google Analytics what content your readers are consuming, and you're able to pump out more of that content in order to help offset the balance of lost traffic for events or calendar contests. MailChimp is great. I'll get into that as we look at Memberful with launching a membership campaign, whether you're soliciting for reader revenue or you're just trying to build up your list and your CRM. Memberful is great for launching donations or reader revenue, or even if you're looking to launch a paywall. Pico is something that we use that is a better program, in my opinion, from a tech stack, but their onboarding time is longer. So generally you can get up and running, and we did this with publishers within 24 hours, getting their membership campaigns running with Memberful. And then later it's a rather simple migration from Memberful to Pico. If you're looking to get on something a little better from a tech perspective down the road. Stripe is great for processing credit cards. The program is built for developers, so it's very easy to integrate with everything. Most plugins and WordPress features or digital features automatically have a Stripe API integration. It's free to set up and get your account activated instantly. They just charge a processing fee like most payment gateways. Ad Manager, so using Broadstreet, if you're not already on Broadstreet, it's very simple to get an account set up immediately, get ad zones created, And whether you have a graphic designer or not that can create ads, if you do, it's very easy to start running ads on your site that a graphic designer or an advertiser have supplied. But it's also very handy to have their ad formats where you can, with no designer, create really nice ads and place them on your site. As we look at some of the membership marketing, you'll see that we're even using a lot of house ads to generate subscribers. OneSignal push notifications is another great program. Very easy to set up, very easy to integrate. We're seeing with publishers that are producing COVID-19 or coronavirus content that they're getting anywhere from a 14 to 75% increase in OneSignal subscribers. I know that's a huge range, but it really is like 14 to 20%. And then for other publishers, it jumps all the way up to 60 to 75%. So there's a little bit of a gap in there, but it's still an increase across the board. That's also free and easy to set up. And I'll show you what that looks like in the next slide. Gravity Forms is great for user submitted content. We're using this for some publishers that are launching directories. Maybe it's like a support local or what's open, who's doing takeout. So it's a way to very easily build forms. You can integrate payment gateways if you decide to. You could also link out for pre-purchase of gift certificates or donations to restaurants or food banks. And directories are a little harder to get up and running, but looking at this from like a 2 to 4 week plan, as Kenny outlined, we're able to get directories up and running, and we've had a large number of publishers reach out that are looking to quickly set up directories. They're working with town council or a local chamber of commerce, and they want to use the publisher's traffic to get information out about how to help local businesses. This is an example of those push notifications. So with OneSignal, you're able to allow users to subscribe, and you might see these on your mobile device or on your website. But here's a good example from Red Bank Green. They run push notifications on their site. They have about 2,000 active subscribers at any given time. Every time they write an article and they choose to send out a push notification, it looks like this up on the right. So you can see it's very catchy: virus update, New Jersey, Red Bank Green. It shows their logo. And they're getting anywhere from like a 6 to 9 click-through rate on these. So basically every time they send one out, it drives anywhere from 150 to a little over 200 users back to the website. The great thing about that is those subscribers are subscribing now with that increase that we're seeing, but they're going to stick around. So when things go back to, let's just say, normal, you're still going to have those subscribers and they're still going to receive those notifications. So it's a great time to build up that base. And then I listed here just a couple of websites that are doing various things related to coronavirus and the way that they're driving traffic to their website. CT Mirror is in Connecticut. They're seeing probably the largest traffic increase I've seen on a local news site. So they're more investigative type journalism. NJ Family, parenting magazine. Probably the best example I've seen of someone pivoting away from their calendar traffic. Obviously, calendar traffic is taking a huge hit because everything's canceled. They're doing a ton of content about things you can do from home, things you can do online, virtual, Hallmark channels, streaming Christmas episodes, things like that. Sweetwater Now, they're very successful with continuing with their ad operations and increasing traffic. They've promoted a special section on their site. Bethesda Magazine is seeing a nice increase in traffic as well. They're also getting a ton of newsletter signups. CT Mirror is as well. They're getting a huge increase in email subscribers. And then trnto.com, more lifestyle type content. but also seeing a healthy increase in page views.
Yeah, definitely. And Christian asks in terms of, I think, One Signal. So where are the subscribers coming from for the push notifications? Do I guess the users opt in at some point?
Yeah, so if you were to go to a site like New Jersey Family, you'll notice, or dfwchild.com, you'll receive a little pop-up that says, would you like to opt in to push notifications? And they can say yes or no thanks. It's very easy for readers to opt in or opt out and continue that pattern. So they'll get a little notification. You do not need the membership platform on your site to do that. One Signal is a separate program.
Right. And I think, and we're about to talk about newsletters and also about One Signal, but being the source of your own traffic is so powerful. Google and Facebook traditionally drive a lot of traffic, and that's where we kind of consider, most publishers probably consider most of their traffic to come from. But being able to drive your own traffic is so powerful, because then you think about it, how some of your revenue, and we'll talk a little bit about programmatic later, some of your revenue can be tied into that, or if you're selling on a CPM basis, can be tied into how much traffic you're getting. So being able to drive your own traffic, especially at a time like this, is very, very powerful. Looks like Christian has another question. Oh, and David answered that. So One Signal, apart from having any membership plugin on the site.
Yeah, you run it separately, but it will help build your membership campaign with getting readers back to your website and showing them value. And it works very, very well for publishers. And you can choose to send it every time you produce new content. I don't really recommend that. It does get annoying for readers. But you can also choose when to send it out. So as you produce content that you want to send out and drive traffic to, it's great. So we'll go into newsletter strategy, sometimes overlooked driver of traffic and revenue. So newsletter strategy right now is capture user emails now. We're seeing as much as a 4,500% increase on new readers on many of the sites that we're managing and monitoring the Google Analytics. So the big question is, how do you get those new readers who are have not been on your site before to supply either their email address or sign up for push notifications? So later on down the road, how are we going to keep them back? And how are we building our newsletter list now in order to boost those subscriber numbers later on as you're selling advertising in your email? So one thing that we've seen is it's okay right now to get annoying temporarily. We're using email pop-ups, email collector boxes. Some publishers, or many publishers, shy away from these because they don't want to annoy readers in typical circumstances. But right now, we're running these email collectors across the board in our different verticals: CRMA, hyperlocals, parenting, and publishers are not receiving complaints from readers. People are filling them out. Some sites are adding a couple hundred subscribers a day, some less, maybe 20 or 30, but it's still an increase because they want to be updated with local content. We're suggesting to send a daily email Monday to Friday, even if it's not your norm. Users are home on their phone and they're consuming content. So even if your normal strategy is once a week or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I would do everything possible to increase that to a daily email Monday to Friday. Where appropriate, send it on the weekends too. But weekday traffic, we're seeing great open rates and great click-through rates. The emails will drive traffic to your site. Don't give away everything in the email, make the user click. One of our publishers was producing great emails, but they were giving the user no incentive to click through to their website. It was kind of, here's all the content, you could get in the email and you don't have to click the site. When you lead the user to click through to your website, you're getting that open rate on your email newsletter, you're getting the click-through rate on your newsletter, but then you're also getting the page view when that user goes to your website. and you're able to put them kind of in that funnel. Experiment with send times. We see different send times work for different publishers. Some are 5 a.m., 9 a.m., 11:30 a.m., 6 p.m. Those work great for various publishers. We've done a lot of A/B testing with that. Newsletter strategy, 30% open rate or better. If your open rate on your newsletter is less than 30%, in my opinion, something is wrong. If you're 25%, 22%, something like that, you're doing okay. But if your open rate is 5%, 7%, it's time to make changes. You might need to clean your list, experiment with subject lines, change the content, change your send time. But if you're not in the range of 30% or better, it's time to make adjustments on the newsletter. Serve newsletter ads via Broadstreet. So a huge advantage of Broadstreet is being able to place newsletter ads within the like MailChimp template. So whether these are house ads or if they're advertisers that you're trying to keep happy as publishers are seeing a decrease in advertising revenue.
Let's look at another question from Christian. How are the newsletter ads recorded, open, impression, or viewability? So it depends. If you're using, if you're not using software to serve the ads into the newsletter, so you're just using the newsletter software like MailChimp or whatever it is, that's going to be you're pretty much going by the number of opens and assuming that matches the number of impressions. But if you're using something like Broadstreet, which does serve ads into the newsletters, then Broadstreet will track an actual impression on that ad inside the newsletter.
I saw a couple of other questions pop up. So, okay, someone answered their own question. Rate of opening the newsletter. Yes, open rate is how many people are opening the newsletter. So essentially, if you send it to 1,000 people and 300 people open it, you have a 30% open rate. The other question, newsletter question for those of us from Constant Contact, Gmail sends it to promotion folder, which affects the open rate. How do we get around that? Move to MailChimp.
There we go. We said we were opinionated.
Yeah. Newsletter strategy. So these are just some of the email collectors that we're using that are working well. So on the left, we have New Jersey Family. If you're in the parenting space, I highly suggest taking some time and going on New Jersey Family. They're doing a great job. So they have this Let's Stay Connected pop-up. We're here to help you through this challenging time. And they have some text. They're doing well. Brooklyner uses a traditional kind of widget in the upper right. A lot of publishers would give the first space to an ad because of visibility, but it's definitely wise to put the newsletter sign up in that spot for now. Brooklyner is, I believe, one of the highest with email acquisition currently. Here's just two other examples from the same site, but CT Mirror, they have a very black and white color scheme, but they've made these yellow and red sign-up boxes. The one on the left appears at the end of every article that they write, and then the one on the right is kind of scattered throughout their website. They're also getting a very high conversion rate. And this goes back to not giving everything away in the newsletter. So you can see Bethesda, they have a photo, headline, and an excerpt or deck. And then they're getting people to click through to their website. This Bethesda Beat email newsletter has one of the highest open rates I've seen on a newsletter for users that are receiving it, opening it, and clicking through to their website.
Right, absolutely. So before we move on to the next session, it looks like MailChimp emails also go to the promotions tab at the top too. David, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but I'm wondering how Gmail is doing that sorting. I can't imagine that they're just taking everything from Constant Contact and MailChimp and throwing it into promotions. There has to be some kind of filter or something that they're keying off of to get it over there.
Yeah, I wonder if it has to do with the subject line or verifying the domain and what sender address you're sending it from. We, with publishers that we, I receive their newsletters from MailChimp, and they don't go to a promotions folder. They come to just the inbox. So I would experiment with looking at verifying domain and what email address you're sending it from.
All right, perfect. Okay, so we're going to move on to this goals section. So if you're moving or you're starting to focus on digital, along with that, you probably want to start setting some goals, right? Both short-term and long-term. And those goals, I think for most of us, usually now that we have a great foundation in terms of our website and our newsletter, we do have traffic goals, but most importantly, we have the goal we really care about is the revenue goal, right? So at the end of a certain amount of time, whether it's months or at the end of a year, what we want to do is set a goal that we want to achieve. And for the examples we're about to walk through, we just picked 240K a year, right? The reason we picked 240K is because it made it easy with the blocks we're about to show you and putting the numbers together. But what you can do is you can adjust this year-end goal or quarter-end goal and make that number whatever you want to do, but follow the same process that we go through in terms of making a goal. So keep in mind that instead of just like jumping into digital and saying like, okay, let's go out, sell ads, let's try and get some readers on board, what we want to do is take our goal and then break it down so we can see a roadmap of what we need to do to get to that goal. Because if we don't have a clear roadmap ahead of us, it's going to be so much harder and we're going to spend a lot more time spinning our wheels getting to where we want to be. So we want to take a goal and kind of work backwards into a total number of sales or memberships that we require to make this work for us. So when we set a goal or after we set a goal, we have some natural constraints that we do want to just keep in mind. So if I set a year-end revenue goal of like 120K a year, or maybe it's $1 million a year, whatever you want it to be, there's only so much time we have to sell, so many people we can reach out to. There are only so many prospects in our industry or our geographical area that we can reach out to. And there's also a minimum price that we would entertain, but a maximum price that our advertisers could even afford. And the same thing goes for membership. If we have a town of 10,000 people, well, we know that there's a certain upper bound on how many members or paying subscribers we could probably attract from that town, right? And that's going to help us kind of figure out what our pricing should be if we want to get to a certain goal or maybe even adjust our goal. So let's just say we do have that 240K year-end goal, and we split that evenly between advertising and membership. So on the advertising side, we say, okay, you know what? That's 120K at the end of the year. That's 10K a month. How can we break that down to make this digestible and something that our team can definitely achieve? So what we did, without really describing what was in these individual blocks, is that we broke that 10K a month down into individual packages. And we said, okay, if we got 8 people on board as paying advertisers at $250 a month, and then another 6 people on board at $500 a month, and then another 5 at $1,000 a month, that would get us to our 10K goal. So we take that big number and we break it down into smaller blocks. And of course, you can fine tune these. You can figure out what would work in your area or what you think would work in your area, but you break it down into digestible blocks. So you're not just going out and selling, just trying to rack one up after the other. Okay, I got this many 250s, I got this many 500s, this many 1000s, your exact progress on the way to your goal. And you can do the same thing with membership. So let's just say we have a $10,000 a month membership goal. Well, if we have 3 tiers of membership, maybe we have $5 a month, $10 a month, and $20 a month. Now you might be thinking in your head, well, 5's too low. I would go higher than that, or 20 sounds too high. You could figure out what your own prices would be, but ultimately what you want to do is generate the math that gets you there. So in this case, we need 1,000 subscribers at $5 a month, 250 subscribers at 10 a month. And maybe we have those people who are like our our supporters who really care about our success, 125 of those at $20 a month, and that will add up to our 10K a month goal. Now, the nice thing about these big goals is that we can break them down even further. So if we take that advertising goal and I said, could you sell this in X number of days? Let's say 90 days. Now, some of us are trying to work on a faster timeline than that. So that's why I put the X there. But if it was 90 days, this is a quarter. This right here, two 250s, two 500s, one 1000 would be a quarter of the way to your goal, right? So you take this big goal, this big number, and then you break it down into understandable chunks. And then you can break it down even further into your quarterly goal, all right? And that's what you have to work toward. And the same way with membership. Could we attract this many members in this number of days of our monthly price? Say we have a quarter of our number of subscribers, 200, 120 for each tier. And then we have our revenue, 100 or 1,000, 1,000, 400 to get us to about a quarter of our $10,000 a month goal. So once you have that foundation, you have that newsletter, or that foundation of the website, you have that newsletter. Now we're setting the goals that we want to hit before we make any efforts on the advertising front. Now that we have those goals, what we want to do is take those packages and we want to start filling them, especially on the advertising side. We want to start filling those different advertising packages with items that are going to help us get to that goal, right? And we want to really think back to that first step of assessing our competition. What can we put into each of these packages that nobody else is going to put in there, nobody else is thinking about? What are we going to do that's unique, that when we kind of pitch it to an advertiser, ask somebody for that 20 minutes of their day to kind of discuss their marketing goals, what are we going to show them that sets us apart from everyone else? So we have our media kit. If you want to see some really nice media kits, if you don't have a digital media kit, these are our 5, or actually our 6 that we like. Arlington Now, Potomac Local, Sweetwater Now, Wausau Pilot and Review, Greater Long Island, New Jersey Monthly. Some are online, some are PDF. And Tiffany, I realized that I'm sure there are a lot of people in the audience who would like to see that, while they're listening to this. If you would like to, if you have them somewhere, put these links in the chat. Otherwise, we can send them out afterward. I'll make sure everyone can see those media kits. But generally, anything that goes into our media kit in terms of guidelines, we want it to be easy to execute, but one or more of the things that advertisers like, which is impact and visibility. There's no small business in the world who doesn't like making a splash and being visible. Of course, other advertisers want results. They want some kind of connection between the money they spent and people coming in the door. And they also want some increased awareness long-term. They want people to know about them, know they're open for business, etc. So we generally want to stay low effort, high impact, easy for you, but good for the advertiser. So if we kind of broke this down into a very rough chart or a quadrant here, on the y-axis, we'd have your cost, which could be either time or money, and what advertisers like going off on that x-axis. Now, if you notice that the things that are really high cost and what advertisers like, you have that on the lower left side. Things that advertisers love but are really high cost for you. So for example, video production. There's an advertiser in the world that doesn't love someone coming in with a video camera and making a short video on them. They all love that. Problem is, it takes you a long time to do that, to get the video out there. Now, some people can make it happen pretty quickly, but to get the video out there, produce it, do all that stuff, do a good job, the back and forth with the client, it ends up taking you a lot of time. And at the end of the day, you're like, did I make money on this project? Dedicated newsletters for an individual client. That's much lower cost, and advertisers love that kind of stuff. Social media shout outs. Advertisers like it, maybe not as much as dedicated newsletters, but the whole point is that you want to stay as low effort for you, but more on that side of what advertisers like. So what's going to make them happy? And for you, didn't really take you a lot of time to put together. So traditionally, in terms of ad options, this is what every publisher who kind of moves online gravitates toward. They go for those leaderboard ads and the sidebar ad, those leaderboard ads and the sidebar ads. The problem with that is that you end up competing with everyone else in the world. You become a direct competitor and say, hey, I'm jumping in this pool too, and I'm going to do what everyone else is doing. And it's going to be really hard to knock on somebody's door and kind of show them a media kit of pretty much pretty much a media kit that matches every other media kit in the world. We want something to be different. We might want to provide some really big options, and we'll see some examples in the next few slides. What we call section sponsorships, things that like might pop out of the page for publishers who, or our customers who really want to make a splash, have a bigger budget. Sponsored content, stories about the advertiser, newsletter display, like we saw in some of one of David's slides, and again, those social media shout outs. Now, this isn't an exhaustive list of options, but these are the things in our toolbox that we want to have when we put together our packages and we say, okay, for $1,000 a month customer, what are they going to pay? So this is an example of one of Broadstreet's probably, I don't want to say hokier, but it's probably a good description. This is one of Broadstreet's formats, the Amazing Cube. All right, just takes 6 images, a logo, and 6 captions. So easy to put together, and you'll be hard pressed to find an advertiser who doesn't love something like that, especially with this kind of prominence. So that's just an example of something that this particular publisher is doing that really no one else is doing. You know, whatever local legacy publication they have, probably not going to do that. Sweetwater Now was probably, I don't know, the inventor of this billboard style format. They've been running it for years, but they run up to 8 advertisers through here. And I think Gary has shared the numbers per client, but generally I think it's anywhere between 2K and 3K per client that they have running at the top of this. And Whistler Chevy has been a long running customer, and I can imagine why they've got some really great visibility here. And this is not just take up the top of the site does slide in front of this, but to give you an example of something that you cannot get anywhere else. Same thing, we've seen that on BaristaNet, C2 News Junkie. This is just the sneaker. There are a lot of different formats like this that can just slide up from the bottom. And then this is, so you can see that our publishers still have these leaderboards and sidebars, but they're doing something different in this case. It is a kind of like a post-it note on the top right. And going back to that newsletter, some publishers are interested to find out that some of their advertising clients are more interested in their actual newsletter than they are in the website. And we've noticed that in a few different spots throughout the country. For whatever reason, that particular market, the advertisers really love the idea of being in someone's inbox as opposed to being on the actual website. One of our customers does such an amazing job giving his customer shout outs on social media. So if they're doing an event, if they're doing some really good work, or if he stopped in there recently, he'll give them a shout out on social media. And of course, is friends with a lot of people in the community, and always drives some visibility. And a lot of times you'll get a really high like count right here. I kind of caught that as it was being posted. This is another example. This is a really good example of native advertising. Now, there are 2 kinds of native advertising, or 2 things that people typically consider native advertising. One is sponsored content, right? Meaning like just posts, like maybe a package of 3 posts that someone had paid for, and we're just writing about them, and that's sponsored content. So it's paid content. This isn't something else that people will call native advertising. And I think, in my opinion, this is true native advertising. This is when you have an ad that kind of blends in with the look and feel of a site. And this is always, again, it looks nice, but it's also very low effort and high impact. It blends in with the rest of the site. It looks great. But all you really need for something like this is an image, text, a description, and a click-through URL. So that's really easy to put together. And if you're going to make a pitch with a potential advertiser, you can throw something together before you actually go to that meeting, and you can say, okay, well, this is what we're thinking of, and here's your image. I found these on Google Images, et cetera. We put together a proof of concept here. What do you think? So it's very low effort for you. You don't have to like go through creative, get an ad designed, all that stuff. You can bring something to that sales meeting right away. And then here's an example of sponsored content, or again, as some people call it, native content. This is a sponsored post. This is very popular with professionals, but not really requiring any special software or any kind of special tool apart from this little sponsored post label. Really good idea to market as paid content. In fact, it should be clearly labeled. But you're just using WordPress to post your sponsored post, or to post your content and make sure that that sponsored or whatever that label is that you choose is on there clearly. To give you an idea of the wide range of prices that we see, so as you're starting to piece, what goes into those different building blocks of revenue that we saw before, digital ads will go anywhere from very, very low prices, like for our customers who sell on a flat rate, $100 a month, to a high of maybe 1,000, or like I mentioned before, even 2,000 a month. Premium display is usually where you get some bigger numbers, and that is some of those items that pop out or just a little more, I guess, a little more eye-catching. But among our customers, this is kind of a table that'll give you a good idea of where a lot of customers land. And if you're the type who has to sell on a CPM basis, you can usually kind of figure out, move backwards and say, okay, well, if I'm selling at the equivalent of a $10 CPM and I get this many page views, you can start to get an idea of what you should be charging for each individual format. So we go back to our packages. We saw some of these different items we could have in our toolkit. We go back to our packages and we say, okay, what can we put in that, for example, $250 package? What's easy for us, but is definitely worth $250 for certain types of advertisers. So who are those types of advertisers? You can see that off on the right. Moving on to those mid-level advertisers, what can we put in that $500 package, right? Maybe some sponsored content, those social media shout outs, could be, a newsletter placement, but you want to put together packages that are interesting and unique for your advertisers. And those top anchor clients, almost definitely some sponsored content, probably some premium display, maybe if we have to, dedicated newsletter. All right. Sometimes we can throw that in to get them, if they're kind of on the fence about coming on board, and say, hey, well, what if we put together a dedicated newsletter blast just for you, welcome you as an advertiser, and kind of talk a little bit about what you do. And you can bring on much bigger advertisers with bigger budgets. So when we know what's in our media kit, then we want to put together a repeatable sales process. Now, that in itself is an entire webinar series. So this is something that we've never actually posted the videos anywhere for our 2019 recorded series, but I think this is an interesting time, and I think everybody should have access to that. So if you visit this link, broadstreetads.com, this will give you access to the entire recorded 2019 ad sales webinar series. So some people have the links to that. We haven't officially posted them anywhere today. We've officially posted them, so everyone will have access to that. It's 8 different sessions of about 45 minutes to an hour, and that walks through the entire optimal ad sales process. So to make sure everybody has that. And then also, if you're interested in the 2020 version, we only have the first video posted, and that's your digital ad sales process overview. Every ad sales process, again, should be efficient, but also repeatable. It should be something that you can pretty much follow the steps with the same prospects and achieve the same results, whether you're doing it or someone on your team is doing it. So we want an efficient and repeatable process. Programmatic, what is it? A lot of our customers will kind of have an idea of what programmatic is, programmatic advertising. There are actually 2 kinds of programmatic. In general, it's tapping into the open web for digital advertising for both buying and selling, right? So once you have your foundation in place, you have your website, you have your newsletter, you have your, your different tools like OneSignal, and you have potentially Broadstreet or whatever it is you're using for delivering ads on news site, your media kit. Once you have that in place, programmatic can be an incredible complement to your digital strategy, and it will potentially help you bring in revenue where you otherwise would not have had it. So the first type of programmatic that this is traditionally what we consider programmatic, your unsold ad space gets filled with network ads, right? So you have a sidebar position or a leaderboard position that you didn't sell, and you want network ads to come in and backfill that space, and you'll get some sort of revenue on the side. To give you an idea of what you can generally bring in from that. Now, this is going to be different for different publishers, but on average, it's usually between 50 cents to $2 CPM. And a lot of publishers kind of say, well, this isn't really worth it for me if that's it. And for other publishers, that's a big part of their revenue. So that's usually the CPM you're looking at. So if you got 100,000 page views and you had one programmatic ad unit, and by the way, the sizes of the ad unit will dictate how much you're probably going to make. So if you have a really small mobile size, 320 by 50, you're not really going to make much money off that, 720 by 90. But if you have a really big version, like a 970 by 250, there's going to be a lot more competition from that. You're going to be on the higher end of that CPM range. So if you had 100,000 page views, in theory, at a $2 CPM, you would make about $200 in revenue for one ad unit on the page. So if you had a few more ad units on the page, you could see how that might add up. Or if you just had higher CPMs in general. Remember, this is the average, probably the middle 50%. They have plenty of publishers who go beyond that. Ads are targeted to the end user, so the ads aren't necessarily contextual to your site. They are probably based on the user's browsing behavior. So like Google knows that that user was searching for washers and dryers earlier, they might see washer and dryer ads on your site because somewhere through this ad network daisy chain, there's information that that user on the site is seeing washers and dryers. And sometimes if there is objectionable content, the user might associate that content, even though it's targeted to them, with your content. So that does happen, and usually there are some ways to kind of either blacklist that ad or make sure that that kind of content doesn't come through. You're unlikely to support your entire operation on programmatic. I've never met a single digital publisher who said they were entirely sustained by programmatic. I've heard some with that gave me impressive numbers that still wouldn't sustain their entire operation, but they had really good income on programmatic. So if you're interested in that, I didn't want to put a list of programmatic providers in this presentation because we do record it and send it out. The good providers come and go. So if you email me, I'll kind of give you my current list, the ones that we don't mind working with. Selling beyond your publication. This is the second end part of programmatic. So let's just say you don't have a ton of traffic on your site. Maybe you get 10,000 page views a month or 100,000 page views a month. And an advertiser might say, well, why would I work with you? You don't even get much traffic. Well, you can also take the campaign that that advertiser would potentially run with you and run it on the open web. So if I'm a small publisher, maybe an upstart, and I don't get a lot of traffic, well, Mr. Advertiser, I can take your campaign and run it on my site, but I will also make sure that it runs on the open web to anybody who visits my site. So you're still reaching my readers no matter where they are on the internet. This is commonly called retargeting, and it gives you ad sales power that you wouldn't otherwise have. And you're kind of acting as an agency in this case. And there are many do-it-yourself options to achieve something like that. But there are companies like January Spring, and we have a number of customers who use January Spring that provide a more guided approach to achieving this. So that's the other end of programmatic. It's not just, hey, give me money for the ads that I didn't sell. It's also, how can I take a campaign with somebody that's working with me and run that beyond my own site and help them hit a much greater number of impressions. So let's move into a very important part of this, especially right now, the membership piece. So we have a number of customers who are really starting to focus on their membership, doing a great job with that, and I'll pass it back over to David.
Yeah, as we addressed kind of earlier on, there's many options for doing a membership program. I'm being in a 2 to 4 week timeline and looking at what works kind of really well, takes out a lot of the friction of like the checkout process. So you're making it easier for readers to contribute, and something that you can get up and running quickly. Memberful is that software. And using Stripe and MailChimp, they're going to give you great flexibility with getting up and running. But then also, if you decide to make a change later on to maybe a more robust software, you're going to have an easier time if you're already at least on Stripe, and MailChimp's going to come in handy as well. So we're recommending for publishers that are already up and running or were working with us, they probably already were set up on like Memberful, Stripe, and MailChimp. I call it the dream team. But there's a great service out there called Pico. I think their website is pico.tools or trypico.com. They have like a 2 to 4 week onboarding process. What I've actually been recommending to publishers that want to use Pico but want to be up and running today is let's get set up on Memberful, and then we work with Pico, and they can easily do a Memberful to Pico migration kind of down the road once you're up and running. So this is just an example of the Memberful checkout. So My Admin's News is running a very successful reader revenue campaign right now. So the background is kind of what their membership page looks like. They have various options running from $5 a month to $30 a month. Each one has an annual option as well. And basically when you click on any of those buttons, $5, $60, etc., you just have to enter in your information, put in your payment, place your order, and it's done. It automatically creates an account for the user so they can manage their subscription later on. And we have actually seen through current events, members that were on like a $5 a month plan going back in and upgrading to a $10 or a $20 a month plan. So Memberful takes care of all that prorating and everything. Here's some numbers from one of our publishers. We launched this, so this is showing a 30-day snapshot. I'll show you some of the marketing that we did as well. But basically over 30 days, we sent out several emails. We did an interstitial ad using Broadstreet on their site to drive readers, to drive members. And in 30 days, really though, it's about 14. You could see kind of the first half of this graph on the upper left is rather flat. So it's been about 14 days and they've driven in just about 13,500 in revenue. They've increased their monthly revenue about $30 to $3,700 a month. So they're over $40,000 a year from reader revenue. Monthly revenue per subscriber is about $6. They have only a 1.5% churn rate, which is incredible. During this time, they've received 95 renewals from people that were already members. And they've had about 200 new members sign up in about 12 days or so. And no one has requested a refund, which is great. This is just a very similar snapshot from another publisher. This one's on a 30-day view, but actually looking at the graph, it's probably only like 7 days that it's been running. So they've driven about 11,000, just under $12,000 of revenue in less than 10 days. So that's money that's been charged and is getting deposited to the publisher's account quickly. Their monthly revenue is up $3,400 a month. You can see their monthly recurring revenue per subscriber is $9.16. So this is that publisher that is running those $20 and $30 campaigns. So they have a higher revenue per customer. They also have a slightly higher churn rate, but 5% is not bad. And they've had 180 new orders in probably about 7 days. So their membership campaign is doing very well. Membership marketing, just because you built it doesn't mean. So what's working? Very simple. We're running an interstitial ad. I'll show you an example of that, but it's more of a passive stream of revenue. We're seeing 6 to 12 new members a day coming from that interstitial ad. The sites we're seeing that on are getting about 300,000 to 600,000 monthly page views with 100 to 200,000 unique visitors per month. That's over like a 30-day, the most recent 30-day period. We're then targeting emails. So we're doing this anywhere from 2 to 4 times a week or 2 to 3 times a week. It's more of a direct revenue stream. So on the days that we send out a targeted email, and I'll show you what that looks like, we're getting 30 to 50 new members that subscribe. So it's a big increase over just running a passive ad. And on those emails, those publishers have between 2,800 and 3,800 email subscribers. So theoretically, if you have 40,000 email subscribers, that would scale up. This is just what, real data that we have right now. Email subject lines, these are just two quick examples. So the Edge reports on the coronavirus pandemic, or now more than ever, we're in this together. Those subject lines had the best conversion rates, as we call them. So when I was mentioning targeting, Memberful integrates with MailChimp. So we're able to send it to the list of normal subscribers. Maybe they have that 3,800 subscribers or so. And then we're able to choose members without an active subscription. So once someone has a subscription, we're not continuing to market to them. In the past, we did that, and it annoys people. We would get emails and say, hey, I'm already a member. Stop asking me to be a member. So it's really important to target to members without an active subscription. The other benefit to that is, you could ask as many times as you want because they don't have a subscription. And actually, a concern is always, well, are people going to unsubscribe because I'm soliciting them? We're actually not seeing high unsubscribe rates. Maybe we'll get 1 or 2 unsubscribes here and there, but we're also adding a lot of new email subscribers from those email collectors. So, we're seeing a positive improvement on the subscriber number, as long as we continue to target and only solicit people that do not have an active subscription. Here's an example of that interstitial ad. So we put this together for one publisher. We kind of modified the colors, created a Broadstreet roadblock ad, and we're running it on 3 publications, and it's performing well. And so they just click and it brings them to the membership page. This is just another example from Bethesda Magazine. We need your support, and that is the big thing. Is we even say in some of the letters, like, we're losing some ad revenue, but we want to keep providing this coverage. We want to provide it to you for free. If you value us, please support us, and that's where we're seeing members come in and make contributions.
All right. So just to recap, again, it's 2 to 4 weeks. And we know we kind of went through a lot of different items on this, but we started with the competitor analysis, website prep, email newsletter strategy, defined our goals, and then really where our revenue comes in, got our digital packages together, programmatic access, and then moved on to that marketing piece. This is, I would say, definitely achievable in the 2 to 4 week range. 2 is very aggressive, but it can definitely be achieved in a month. And the reason that we did have some strong opinions about which software they could use, because there are always alternatives, and there are always, there's always software that could potentially do something a little differently or the way that you'd like it. But getting set up this quickly, based on our experience and working with our customers, we make the recommendations that we do because we know you can kind of hit this timeline. So we're going to take a quick look at questions. And David, one of these came up. I think Jay asked, Jay from MyRye, what is the conversion of unique users to paid? So have you seen kind of a, based on the total number of readers, what percentage you could kind of expect become paying reader or paying or members?
I don't know the number based off of email subscribers, but there's been a lot of research that has gone into reader revenue models from companies like Membership Puzzle Project and News Revenue Hub. They generally say it's 1 to 2% is kind of what you could count on. So looking at your unique visitors and being able to count on 1 to 2% of those becoming paid members.
All right, perfect. And I think for Karen, she said, how can you, I'm guessing, differentiate between regular subscribers and members? Maybe is that in the marketing and being able to say only send this to users who are not members? So Karen, if you'd like to maybe clarify that a little bit, we can come back to that. And then Jenny says, for us, subscribers are people who get our free email products. Members are people who have given us reader revenue. We don't have subscription model, such paywall though. That's an interesting item. So, David, how many of, I guess in this case, my admins, for example, do they have a paywall in place? Or is it just a call to action?
They just have a call to action. It's not a paywall. So there's a differentiation between reader revenue membership is typically not gated content. So you're typically saying we do not have a paywall. We're giving content away for free, but support us through a contribution. You're just asking for support to continue providing free content. And then that's different than a publisher like a Shawnee Mission Post that gates content and says, hey, you get 3 or 5 or 7 articles free per month, and then everything's blocked and you have to pay us.
Right. And this is kind of a question on my end. Do you see a clear benefit to gating your content? Meaning, do publishers who gate their content, do they have higher conversion rates than publishers who don't, or does it seem more or less the same?
I don't know exact data on that, but I can say that our publishers that are gating content are receiving more subscribers and are they have higher monthly revenue counts. So they might be in the range of 2,000 to 4,000 monthly subscribers that are paying to access their content versus on a membership model. A good reader revenue model might be around 1,000 members.
Got it. All right, perfect. So Karen says, I mean, most people pay for a regular subscription. To get those who do not, how do I get them to support us? We are providing free COVID-19 coverage open to all. Would that possibly work? So most people, trying to understand that. David, do you have any thoughts there?
Most people pay for a regular subscription. Does that mean a print subscription or already a paywall? I know some publishers, just kind of looking at both, some publishers that already have a paywall are asking print and or align we are paywall. So some publishers that have a paywall, depending on your paywall provider, you can also solicit and ask for an additional contribution. So if you were using something like a Pico, or I believe you can do it with some other providers like Pigeon or even Memberful, you can solicit and say, during this tough time, I know you're paying $5 a month, but would you also consider a one-time donation? And then there are, on the print side, if you have paid subscribers, you can integrate many of these paywall and membership softwares with your CRM on like circulation side. So let's say you're using like a Canby and West, who's very advanced digitally. You can integrate like a Pico or Memberful and connect so that those paid subscribers to your print magazine also have access to your paywall content. It's a little more advanced, but it can be done.
All right. So someone, I think Michelle asked, do you have any advice on how to pivot a canceled event to an online model? We don't. I think we had an interesting case study for a publisher who helped pivot a canceled event to a fundraiser. And I think that might also have been my admins. So they did a good job there when I first heard about it. I haven't heard of anyone pivoting anything from an in-person event to something virtual, although, Michelle, if you email me afterward, I think I might have a publisher in mind who might have done something like that. I'm thinking, I don't want to give the name out, but just email me afterward and I'll reach out to who I think might have done something like that and just double check. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't have anything to speak to right now.
I can share with you, Kenny, too, a possible link or two on that. I know there were some publications that canceled the event, so did like a virtual directory of all the vendors and businesses that were going to be represented there. And then also in a niche publication like localspins.com. They cover music scene in Michigan. All the concerts were canceled, so they did like a calendar with live streaming of concerts, and people can still buy tickets as like a contribution to the band. So that's interesting, and that's on localspins.com.
Okay, and then Jay asks, can you talk more about directories, both providers and plugins, to build if there are good freemium models where, say, all real estate brokers can get a free listing? And David, I guess that's probably in your wheelhouse there, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have a directory product. So if you want to email me, I can drop my info in there. You can go to webpublisherpro.com/contact, or just go to our site and fill out the form. I will get back to you today with an example of our directory, how it works, how publishers are using it to promote, support local businesses, realtors, restaurants currently. And then even if our directory product wasn't a fit, I can direct you to one or two others as well.
All right. And then one that kind of slipped by, Trent asked, do you have any experience with your clients having to deal with violation of community standards on Facebook or Instagram? Just kind of summarizing what comes up. It sounds like someone might have reported them, and probably for something that was not abusive or offensive content, but it got reported anyway. And now you're prevented from sharing links on your page, which is becoming a big problem. Have you seen that before? I actually haven't seen that.
I have not.
No, but I definitely hear that trying to get in touch or kind of make your case with anybody at Google or Facebook is going to be much easier said than done. They're not really known for getting back in a timely manner, if ever. So I might think about ways that you could kind of pivot to maybe like a different model, perhaps a newsletter or a separate Facebook page. I know that's not ideal. It's not like a great answer, but again, it's like the power of that newsletter or that website is like the ability to drive your own traffic. It's specifically to get away from these kind of like single points of failure like Facebook or Google, or that just extreme dependency where they have such an impact and they seem so indifferent to our needs as publishers at the same time.
Someone asked, what's the best, Trent asked, what's the best, most efficient and affordable approach for quick hitting ad opportunity to increase page views and social media followers?
Okay, so this is about promoting the actual publication, it sounds like. To quick hitting ad opportunity to increase page views on your site and social media followers. So if we're specifically looking for an ad opportunity, it's kind of hard to say because I wouldn't really consider it terribly efficient. I mean, if you wanted to do it, you could use, Facebook's page, boost ads. But the problem is that they will boost that page in front of people who like may or may not be relevant to you, and you're going to get a lot of people liking your page, which aren't necessarily, when you start getting non-organic followers like that, you get some pretty weird people who are like getting into your, into your followers, which can be a little, which can be a problem later on, especially if you're running any ads or anything like that. So I know.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I know Scott Broadbeck at ARLnow.com, Arlington Now. He's had a lot of success with running like lead generation ads on Facebook. Promoting his publication and getting people to submit their emails to sign up for email lists. He's had a lot of success with that, and it's helped him launch some new sites as well. So that could potentially be an option for generating subscribers from Facebook ads and then later emailing them and turning them into page views.
Right. That's a good point on those lead gen ads. And I was skeptical about it for Broadstreet early on, but we ran one not with Facebook, but with LinkedIn, and it ended up being really effective. So it does sound like it could be something that's useful.
There's also retargeting. So whether you like DIY it real quick and go to something like adroll.com, and even throw like $200 on a campaign, you can, with all those new users that might be visiting your site or finding you through various sources, you can retarget them through like your own campaign, pretty low overhead, and at least help try to drive traffic back to your site. And then on your site, it's all about acquiring their email address.
So Peggy says, Gary, what about running targeted Facebook ads to your best content? That's a really good option too. I think Gary later says engaging new subscribers on Facebook, basically driving them back to your content. So that sounds like a good strategy. And then Peggy, is social media recommended or actual retargets on other sites for lead generation and driving traffic? Not sure I'm understanding that one.
I saw another question about are there publishers that are typically print, but they're going entirely digital because they can't print right now, or they don't have distribution, or the costs are too high. So yes, we have a few publishers that have decided not to print like their April issue, or some have even already called their May issue. So there's some options with at least embedding digital content, but then building out special sections, maybe offering new ad zones and new advertising opportunities with something like Broadstreet to serve those advertisers. So there's that. And then we do have some publishers that have basically permanently called it on print and are just going entirely digital now. And they're going to get the benefit of, as Kenny pointed out in one of the first slides, of basically cutting like all overhead, getting really lean and mean, and being able to become a digital first outlet or digital only outlet.
Yep, definitely. So for Peggy says, to drive traffic to our websites, do you think retargeting is more effective than social media to drive the traffic? It depends on the click-through rates and the engagement rates on the actual campaign. You can use social media and/or social media advertising to drive more people back to your sites, but it also ultimately comes down to whether people are engaging with that campaign and actually clicking through. And I've had some really high click-through rates on native campaigns through tools like AdRoll. Basically, using AdRoll's native advertising tool, I'm getting close to 1% click-through rates, because basically you're allocating a budget to try and drive a certain number of people to your site. And for every 100 impressions, at best, you're going to get 1% of those people to actually click through and go to your website. So I found AdRoll's native advertising to be effective for driving people back to the site, but you might get better results on social media. So it's hard to make say that one's better than the other there. But in my experience, AdRoll's worked out really well. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, one benefit is that they're both rather inexpensive to experiment with. So you could go on Facebook and throw, $50 to $100 into a campaign. You can go on AdRoll and throw, I think you can do it as low as like $100 into a campaign. So you can experiment with both and see what works better for your publication, and then continue with that, or depending on resources, you might just continue with both of them, because they're, it's not like you have to spend $5,000 to find out if it's going to work. You could find out with pretty low investment.
All right, John says, answer to a question just mentioned. For the first time in 18 years, we'll not be publishing our April 2020 print edition, but hopefully just April, possibly May, doing an HTML5-based digital edition, focusing on food delivery and pickup with free ads to our clients. note our clients are 85% events, bars and restaurants, crazy times. Absolutely. Thank you for that, John. All right, cool. Let's hang on for another couple of minutes. We'll see if any questions come through. We're coming up to the 90-minute mark, so we did run over a little bit, but we'll hang on for a few more minutes and see if any questions come in. Have you set up?
I was Trent. Your question is great. We have open forums. We've seen publishers doing that, whether it's in like a Facebook group or they're actually running forum software. There are some good options and plugins for WordPress, or you can look at a company like Discourse and get a really good forum up and running. And we have a publisher, pmq.com. It's Pizza Magazine, and it's for B2B, for pizza shop owners. So very active forums in these times.
Right. And we recently were able to integrate Broadstreet into Discourse as well. So even though it is kind of third-party software, you can also, if you do have some favorite advertisers who are working with you, or you're interested in giving them a leg up at a time like this, you can run Broadstreet in Discourse. So what plugin is best for forums, in your opinion? It sounds like WordPress plugin. I personally, and I'm going to kind of give my background is in WordPress development, and David's been doing probably that much more than I have for the last however many years. But from a software developer's perspective, usually you want to use the right tool for the job, and WordPress is fantastic for websites and for many different use cases. But I think Discourse, something that is suited to forums, is usually your best option, as opposed to kind of like bending WordPress to serve that use as well. And David, you can give me your own opinion on that, and if it's a completely opposite opinion, that's totally fine. But that's what I was thinking.
I completely agree, and it's why like our publishers that have long established forums run on Discourse, to kind of let those companies that focus on one thing really, really well, let them handle it. It's the same reason why we are saying use Memberful for your membership program instead of like WooCommerce, which is the built-in WordPress e-commerce feature, because we've tried that and it was disastrous. So it's, use a third party when you need to use a third party.
And it looks like we use Constant Contact. You recommended MailChimp. Is there a handful of reasons we should make that change?
We just find that when you're integrating various third parties or things with your website, that it's generally easier to do with MailChimp. And one of the big things that we do with our publishers is automation. So we'll automate and embed Broadstreet links through like RSS feeds or content. So your daily news, your sponsor content, your events. And we could do all that through either like the MailChimp drag and drop editor with what they call the RSS merge fields, or a simple custom template. So the ability to do a lot of automation in MailChimp is what makes it more desirable for us than a Constant Contact.
Yeah, I think if you're on Constant Contact and you don't have any problems with it, and it's part of your workflow, then there have to be some really good reasons to make the change to MailChimp. But if you're starting from nothing, we definitely recommend MailChimp. I think it's the point where there's some features that are missing, or just some little things like MailChimp's ability to do that RSS merge, or little things like macros, which make integration of other services a whole lot easier that Constant Contact doesn't have built in. So when you're at the point where Constant Contact is kind of holding you back, then it might be a time to consider the change.
Yeah, and I remember we do have some publishers that run Constant Contact or Active Campaign or Second Street, and Active Campaign, Second Street, those are totally fine. We're looking at this from like a get up and running quickly perspective. But I think MailChimp also gives you a lot of features in their free and lower priced plans that if you want to unlock in Constant Contact, you need to be on like a higher priced, more expensive enterprise plan. So depending on resources and the size of publisher, paying Constant Contact a premium could be prohibitive. And from Seattle's Child, you may have covered this already. We're going digital only for our April edition. Do you have a digital publisher you recommend? I personally like Issue. I've seen good metrics and results from using Issue, issuu.com. It's rather inexpensive. It's easy to use. Kenny and I were just part of a discussion of people talking about other software that they use. So I can gather that information and follow up as well. But I think I've seen the best readership on Issue. But keep in mind, you want to get all that content. You want to get those ads on your actual website as well, because you want the search engine optimization performance. You want the ad metrics. And people are consuming more content from your website than from a flip book.
Right. I was trying to figure out what the name of that service was. It's like Flip 5 HTML or Flip HTML5.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah.
I was trying to find it too quickly on my other monitor, and I couldn't find it. But the Issue, I think you can get all the Gary Collins just dropped it in, fliphtml5.com. So that's also good. Issue, I think you can unlock all the features for, what's it like? It was either like $20 a month or $40 a month, something like that. So, it's $500 a year. You can unlock everything, much cheaper than print.
Right, definitely.
Lauren Carroll from Toronto for Kids, she asks, is there a risk of losing subscribers when switching email providers? You can generally do an export from Constant Contact or I happen to know Lauren's on Constant Contact, but you can do an export and migrate those users over to MailChimp, and you won't lose users. It can be a good time, though, to also run your list through like a list cleaning service and clean that up as well. It's much different than if you have like a huge spreadsheet of 20,000 email addresses and you try to upload that to MailChimp. You're gonna have some problems. But if MailChimp will know that it's coming from like a Constant Contact, so they're gonna upload those emails and know that they're clean and verified.
Definitely. All right. So it looks like we're just over the 90-minute mark. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. If we do have any additional questions, you could send them on to me, Kenny at broadstreetads.com, or David at webpublisherpro.com. But we do appreciate everyone for joining us. Joining us. And we know it's a lot of information in a short period of time. What I'll do is make sure that I get this recording out to everybody. Like I said, I'll usually follow up by an email. Everybody that's registered, all of those email addresses, I'll make sure you get it. Any follow-ups, definitely send them our way. Again, good luck through all of this. We know it's a kind of an interesting time for everybody, but we're definitely here to help you get through it, and hope that today was useful to everyone. So thank you again. Enjoy the rest of the day, and everyone take care.